Hey, people. Welcome to another episode of the Rogers Take podcast. I'm your host, Roger. And here we go. All right, so today I want to talk about, or I should say, today's topic is illegal immigration, asylum seekers, and sanctuary cities. So, what's the deal on it? Well, first of all, let me just give you some background here. About a year ago, the governors of Texas and Arizona, that's Governor Abbott and Ducey, began busing asylum seekers to cities, to sanctuary cities, to so-called sanctuary cities like New York, Chicago, L.A., Washington, D.C., and so forth. And they begin busing these people, these asylum seekers, to these locations without, by the way, consulting or conferring with the mayors of those respective cities. They begin busing them there, and it's been about a year now. And in New York in particular, New York has now received over 70,000 asylum seekers. 70,000 have arrived thus far in New York. And New York is basically stretched to the limit. This is what Mayor Eric Adams is saying about this situation. The city is stretched to the limit. But despite that, and despite all of this, New York City, under the leadership of Mayor Adams, as well as the other various sanctuary cities that I mentioned and others, are doing the best they possibly can to try to accommodate these so-called asylum seekers. They're doing everything they can. And this includes, setting up temporary shelters, setting up shelters in school gymnasiums that are not being used, setting up shelters setting up, temporary tent cities and so forth. They're doing all of this. And it's estimated, according to Eric Adams, that the city has already spent close to $1 billion to try to take care of these people. And the thing that's kind of interesting is that the city has its own unique local laws that require the city to house and take care of anyone who asks for it. Anyone who is homeless has, by law, the right to get a roof over their head and so forth within a 24-hour period. And this is especially true if these homeless people are families. So technically, these asylum seekers are homeless, and therefore, under the local laws of New York City, the city is required to provide housing to these people within 24 hours. And the law is very specific. Not only must they provide housing, but this housing has to include, in the case of families anyway, a private bath, cooking facilities, and so forth. And so this is the burden that's on New York right now. And despite all of this, despite the fact that the city is burdened with this, Governors Abbott of Texas and Ducey of Arizona, as well as DeSantis of Florida, continue to bus these asylum seekers to these so-called sanctuary cities. So, what is their logic and what is their reasoning for doing so? What is the reasoning for Governor Abbott, for instance, of Texas? What is his reasoning for continuing to bus these asylum seekers to New York? Well, according to them, they're saying, well, since these cities have declared that they're sanctuary cities, New York City and places like that should expect this. And if they're not willing or able to take care of these people, then they shouldn't have declared themselves as being sanctuary cities. Well, hold on there, Governor Abbott, and hold on there, Governor Ducey, and hold on there, Governor DeSantis of Florida. Let's look at these statements a little bit closer. First of all, what are asylum seekers? Well, asylum seekers are those foreigners who are fleeing their country in order to escape persecution based on race, national origin, religion, membership in certain organizations, and or political opinion. And if they're seeking asylum and they come to the U.S. is obligated by law, by international and federal law, to take in these people. In other words, the U.S. cannot turn away any asylum seeker. If they come here and they're seeking asylum, the U.S. must take them, provided, however, that they successfully complete a processing at the point of entry to the United States. So what does the processing include? The processing involves or includes photographs being taken of them, fingerprints being taken of them, and a review of their claims for asylum. And once they've successfully completed this, these so-called asylum seekers are legal. They're not illegal immigrants, they're legal. And they're able to come into the United States, and then wherever they happen to be at, that particular location or municipality becomes basically responsible for their well-being until a hearing is set, an ultimate hearing to decide whether or not their asylum claims are actually valid. And if they're found to be valid at that point, they can actually become permanent citizens. But in the meantime, these people are not able to work. They're not going to allow them to work. So that's what asylum seekers are. So when these asylum seekers come to New York, they're actually homeless people. In effect, they're homeless people that come to New York, and then New York is responsible by law for their well-being. And they must be, and that includes housing and so forth. So these are the people that DeSantis is sending over here. So now the next thing I want to talk about is, what are illegal immigrants? What exactly are illegal immigrants? Illegal immigrants are foreigners that come to, or that cross over into the United States without being properly processed or registered. They're not processed or registered because they avoid this by coming over into the United States in a secret way. Okay? And as a result, and then what they usually do, once they get over here, they usually obtain false ID so that they can work. And that's what they do, and that's what they've been doing for years. And so these people are not documented. That's why sometimes people refer to illegal immigrants as undocumented. So they come here, they get their false ID, and they go ahead to work. Okay, and that's what they do. And these people are undocumented. So that's the difference between asylum seekers who are legal, who are actually legal once they complete the processing process at the point of entry. And then you have your illegal immigrants who come here via the border. And most of them come via the U.S. borders between the U.S. and Mexico. That's where they come through. Okay? And it just so happens, of course, that both Texas and Arizona are border states. And so they're bordering the country of Mexico. And so that's where a lot of these people are coming across. All right. So what's my point? My point is this. Well, before I actually get to the point, let me just say this. The next thing I want to define is sanctuary cities. What exactly are sanctuary cities? Okay. So many cities, especially ones controlled by Democrats, have declared themselves to be sanctuary cities. And a lot of people don't understand exactly what that means or what it entails. So sanctuary cities are those cities that officially declare that they are sanctuary cities, meaning that they will not participate or engage in any efforts to deport any illegal immigrants. They will not do this. Okay? And their reasoning for this is pretty straightforward. They believe that these illegal immigrants are not criminals and they're not rapists like Donald Trump tried to portray them as recently. Instead, they are hardworking members of the community that ought to be given the opportunity to eventually become citizens instead of being deported. So legally, as a matter of fact, the New York City Council just passed a law saying that forbidding any money or any New York City agencies to assist in any way the federal government in deportation efforts of these illegal immigrants. And so these cities have declared themselves to be sanctuary cities. And so Basically, the long and short of it is that sanctuary cities are for illegal immigrants. And their purpose is to allow these illegal immigrants to continue to be working class people without fear of being deported. And that eventually they will be given a pathway to citizenship. Because, and further, that these are the type of people that these cities want to stay in their cities. They don't want to deport these people. Why? These are, working members of the community. So why would they want to deport them? And that's their stance. So again, sanctuary cities are for illegal immigrants to reside in without fear of deportation. That's what sanctuary cities are. So now let's back up and look at the situation. So Governor DeSantis and Governor Ducey, and like I said, Governor Abbott of Texas have claimed that, well, since these sanctuary cities have declared themselves to be that, we're going to start sending asylum seekers to these cities. And by the way, these asylum seekers are coming in ever large numbers. They're crossing the borders. That's what these asylum seekers are doing. And like I said, the United States cannot turn them away. If they come and they say, hey, I'm an asylum seeker, they are processed on the spot. And as long as they meet the criteria, they are then illegal. They're legal. And they're into the country, and that's it. So when Governor Abbott and the others said that they're going to be sending the asylum seekers to New York and other sanctuary cities because these cities said that they are sanctuary cities, they got it all wrong. Because these sanctuary cities or the declaration of being the sanctuary for is not for asylum seekers. It's for illegal immigrants. Why? Because the asylum seekers are not technically illegal, and they have no fear of being deported because they're not here illegally. Do you understand? And so they don't have that fear of being deported, and so there's no need for that sanctuary that these cities have declared themselves to be. And so that's where the big confusion is. And the governors of the states that I mentioned were completely wrong for sending these people to these sanctuary cities under these false pretenses. That's the issue. That's the real issue. But having said that, I'm a Democratic liberal. I'm a liberal. And, I'm 100% in favor of these sanctuary cities doing what they're doing. But the reality is that it's gotten to the point where this situation with the asylum seekers is becoming unmanageable big time. And so as a result, I personally believe that some of these federal laws that do not allow the United States to turn away any asylum seekers, some of these laws have to be amended. And when I say amended, what I'm actually saying is that if, for instance, the number of asylum seekers that are coming into a particular municipality or coming into the country, period, if the situation becomes unmanageable, then there ought to be an amendment that allows that particular law to be temporarily suspended, or at least limited in the number or cap. There should be caps on the number of asylum seekers that can come in for that period of time until the situation is brought back under control. And so during this time period of suspension, this will give the various municipalities enough time to find housing, proper housing, and properly take care of the asylum seekers that are already here. So it sounds a little strange, but the only analogy I could think of is this. It's like having a sinking ship with only one lifeboat. And the lifeboat is filled to capacity, but it keeps on letting people in until eventually the lifeboat sinks and everyone perishes. It's a harsh analogy, but one that's needed to make the point. So that's the analogy I use with this. If the situation is so out of hand and we're spending so much money and we're exhausting all our resources, then obviously it is so obvious that in that particular situation, there ought to be amendments to the law that allows the law to be temporarily suspended until the situation can be cleared up. It's a very simple thing. Of course, there would be some exceptions to this rule. We won't get into that, but obviously there'd be some exceptions. And the other thing is that the law should also be amended so that no one particular municipality, city or state, will be burdened with asylum seekers. So right now, asylum seekers are going to only certain particular cities. But there should be an amendment to the law that requires asylum seekers, when they arrive here, to be dispatched evenly throughout the United States, so they're not a burden on any one particular city or municipality. This is the only fair way to deal with this. It is the only fair way to deal with this, okay? And the only exception would be that if these asylum seekers have family members or friends who are citizens of the United States and reside here and who are citizens or legal aliens, if they're already here and they agree to allow the asylum seekers to stay with them, then of course the asylum seeker would have that option of going to that person or person's location. Okay, so that would be the only exceptions. So these are just some of the things that I believe need to happen in order to correct this situation. But the one thing I must say, that as a Democrat liberal, I am extremely proud of the way these sanctuary cities have been handling this situation thus far. Despite all of the negativity, these sanctuary cities continue to use all available resources to try to accommodate these people. And for that, I say kudos to them, and they deserve it too. But having said that, again, Governor Abbott and his two cohorts must be checked on this particular issue, because sanctuary cities, again, is not for asylum seekers, but rather it's for illegal immigrants. And that's the long and short of it. So what do you think? Do you agree or disagree? I'd like to hear your comments and opinions. And of course, if you like the show, please subscribe.